Welcome to 5 points of articulation and my long-awaited, long-promised Venom head swaps. First up, just a couple of parameters. I'm only going to be looking at Venom figures by Marvel Legends, so I won't be including Marvel Select. Don't get me wrong, it's a great figure, but the parts just are not compatible with Marvel Legends. I'm also not going to be looking at the Deluxe Venom. It's Marvel Legends, but has its own unique proportions which aren't compatible with the others. Unless, of course, this is the kind of Venom you want to see. We will, however, be covering the Absorbing Man Wave version, the Monster Venom Wave version, the movie version, the Amazon 3-pack version, and the King in Black version. I'm also not going to be worrying so much about side-by-side comparisons this time. Instead, I'm going to be focusing mainly on the heads, and, where compatible, hands. Unfortunately, I can't find the Eddie Brock head that goes with this figure, and I am so sorry. First up is the Absorbing Man Wave. With your blessing, because the bodies are the same, I'm going to be just using the one figure, but I will be using all the parts. This is the first of two heads it comes with. Notice the long, slathery, green, slime-soaked tongue. It also comes with this very Todd McFarlane-esque closed-mouth version. Because the bodies are the same, the heads can mix and match on either the Absorbing Man or Monster Venom Wave bodies, but Monster Venom has this head. It's very similar to the previous head, but without the tongue. Moving over to the Amazon 3-pack, and this works surprisingly well. The head's a bit big, but not so big that it looks out of proportion. This one, of course, is distinct for that wraparound tongue. Amazon also has this alternate head halfway revealing Eddie Brock. Pulling back in this scales really well too. The Eddie head sits at a pretty decent height, and it does make for a pretty cool effect. One way you can improve that proportional difference is by using the Amazon 3-pack's hands. They're a little bit larger and therefore more monstrous, especially if you use the clawed hands. Obviously they're a bit big, but that is kind of the point. Next up, and here we have one of two versions of the movie head. Despite being an overall larger figure, this head is surprisingly small for this body, but I think it actually works to this figure's advantage. It makes a smaller body look that much bigger and imposing. In a way, it kind of reminds me of this early Toy Biz figure, swapping with the open mouth tongue waggly head, and I think this balances out pretty well. Leastways, it looks a bit more proportionate to this body, and if you wanted a good comic Venom that isn't too hulking, this does strike a nice medium. With that in mind, I think the King in Black head might be a bit too big. The skin is also a bit more detailed. If you really wanted to, though, I'm sure you could make it work. Not surprisingly, the closed mouth version feels a bit smaller and therefore slightly more proportionate. I absolutely love this grin. From the profile though, his head really juts out. If you wanted to use the hands you could, but I will warn you the pegs aren't compatible so they don't click into place. They do fit in pretty snugly though. I also think that these clawed hands look a lot better than the Amazon 3-packs. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that this configuration with the movie head and the King in Black hands is my favorite combination using this body. And speaking of bodies, it's time for our next one, the Amazon 3-pack version. Just a reminder, here's the head that came with it, and also the hands. This particular body has some great articulation, including butterfly joints, so whatever combination you end up using is going to have some really cool posing options. That said, I'm obviously not going to be recommending the Absorbing Man or Monster Wave hands. First up, and here's the Absorbing Man Wave head. Like we talked about before, the smaller scale makes the body look that much bulkier. It does sit a bit high, but it fits well. Swapping it out with the alternate head really does balance out that scaling issue. The open mouth distracts from how high it sits, and even from the side looks really good. Here we have the Monster Wave head. It benefits from the open mouth making the head look bigger. For a more classic comic look, this is a very solid combination. Once again though, the movie head creates a very interesting effect. Even though it's smaller than the previous necks, it sits lower so it's a bit more natural. You will want to push the head back though to keep the jaw from jutting out too far. Switching over to the open mouth tongue waggly head, and I think this is a winner. I personally imagine Venom as a broader character, so I like this head to body ratio. Putting him in a somewhat dynamic pose and you can see what I mean. That said, if you prefer your Venom a bit more head body proportionate, the King in Black one is a great option. This one reminds me of a grown-up version of the original Spider-Man animated series Venom. It sits at a good height on the neck and doesn't jut out too much. As I said before, there's a bit more detail on this particular head sculpt than the others, but even so it marries together pretty well. Switching out the other head, and once again this is a lot of fun. There's a very specific piece of Venom artwork from the 90s that this head reminds me of, but I can't quite place it. The face does jut out a bit, but on this bulkier body it isn't quite so noticeable. Switching out the hands with King in Black, and these ones are actually a little bit smaller, but I kinda like it. I enjoy the big monster hands, but these are a bit more subdued. As such, they feel more natural. As natural as a character like this can be anyway. The fists, on the other hand, are so similar they're hardly worth swapping out. It's good for me though, because my Amazon 3-pack sent me two right hands. Moving on to our next figure, figure, and here we have the movie version. I'll be talking about this figure in more detail in its own video, but suffice to say I've always felt this design was a bit naked, mainly because of that lack of logo. I will say the veins do add something, and I do like the overall texture. I also really like the head designs, particularly this one. I've got mixed feelings about the film, and especially the sequel, but design-wise I'm glad they went for it. If you were wondering what the movie would look like if it was a bit more classic though, here you go. Despite all the texturing on the body, this isn't so bad. Admittedly, the waggly tongue version is a bit more cartoonish. Pulling back though, and that little pop of green around the mouth really adds something. Switching over to the monster head though, and this is fine too. Leastways, there's some color in the mouth that breaks up all the white, black, and gray. As for the Amazon head, I think that one might be the best so far. In some ways, it feels more like a movie head than the movie heads. Looking at the half-exposed Eddie, and it becomes clear it's a comic. I'm sure it was just a matter of them not wanting to pay more, but I really wish we'd gotten a Tom Hardy head like this. If you look around on the internet though, you can find some custom-made ones. Going back to the other head for a moment, I also switched out the hands. They don't entirely match because they have the white patches on the back, but I do like the bigger claws for this buck. And as it happens, it's the exact same buck as used for our final figure, King in Black. Only difference are the holes in the back to accommodate the wings, and of course the heads. These heads are slightly bigger than the ones for the movie, which creates a different sense of proportion. I love this figure on its own, so I can't wait to see how some other head options look. Starting as always with Absorbing Man, and here we have that Todd McFarlane head. Proportion-wise, the combination of this head and body really feels like what he looked like in those early comics. The head sits great on the body, not too much neck or too little, and of course the addition of that green slimy tongue really adds something. It's an effect I'd like to see more Venom heads do. I have a feeling that all the heads are going to look good on this body, but so far these early ones hold up a lot better than I expected. Even this Monster Venom Wave one without the tongue. Because the same body was used between those two figures, I really feel like all three of these heads count as a set, and they're definitely the most classic of the bunch. Unfortunately, because the pegs aren't compatible, I cannot use the hands that came with those two. But let's be honest, even if I could, they would have been way too small anyway. For the Amazon figure, I want to start with Eddie instead of the fully masked version. To my eye, the size of this Eddie Brock head in relation to the body is perfect. I also like how the eyes have a kind of pearlized quality. It helps it to stand out against the white on the body. If Hasbro ever gives us another fully unmasked Eddie Brock head, I really hope it's a continuation of this. Looking at the fully masked head, and I love it. Again, the pearlized eyes really pop, and all those extra details on the head really fit this body. Swapping out the hands, and once again, those larger claws work really well. If you'd indulge me for a moment, I'd like to keep the Amazon hands in as I move over to the movie head. This head is designed for this body, so it sits really well, but I've got to admit those extra large hands really do add something. When the Venom movie figure came out, a lot of people customized it to give it the logo, so seeing Hasbro do it officially is pretty sweet. As for the closed head mouth, I don't like it quite as much here. I like the head great on other figures, but on this one I think it's just a bit too small. That being said, giving him the regular hands does help. I hope you enjoyed this head swap video and that it was worth the wait. Sound off in the comments below and tell me which combination is your favorite. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.